We are now on Just Chatting. So I'm going to just start playing this. I don't know if this is a good discussion or not, but we'll see. We'll see. We got Dr. K, Alex O'Connor, who I'm fans of both. I don't know who this guy is, but we'll see.
Poor mental health was linked to not knowing what to do with their life. And to give some further stats, which I found really interesting, around the rise of religiosity.
Obviously, this discussion is really important for our entire document here, so might as well watch it.
In the UK, a belief in God amongst 18 to 24-year-olds has risen from 18% in 2021 to 37% in 2025, according to YouGov. And in the UK, monthly church attendance has risen from 4% up to 15% in 2025. There is something going on, and that's what I want to talk about today. But before we do that, I'd love to understand the perspective that all of you bring to this conversation. So if I start with yourself, Alok.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned a lot about mental health. I'm a psychiatrist. So for me, finding meaning and purpose is like a very practical thing. So literally a patient will come into my office. They'll say, I have no reason to live. There's nothing worth it in life. I am suicidal. I want to kill myself. So I have a job as a clinician to like fix that problem in a very like practical way. So I've got, you know, a couple of weeks, hopefully.
This is our same perspective with this document.
And so usually the way that I approach that is there's a lot of sort of evidence-based scientific approaches to finding purpose. I think those tend to work really well, but I'm
it's
sure
going to be part 3.
Philosopher colleagues will point out and tear me apart. You know, science has a lot of shortcomings. And so then what I tend to find works incredibly well is adding a certain degree of spiritual practice to that. And usually when we put those two things together, things work. And the real proof point for me was when I started streaming, 10,000 people reached out to me in 1 month asking, hey, like, do you have room in your private practice? And so I started to think about, okay, if this is a methodology, then can it be taught? So I started this coaching program, and what we found in our pilot study of 1,453 people is that if you stick with the program for about 20 weeks, your sense of purpose increases by 68%. I'd love to hear from my colleagues, but I think, you know, if someone asks me, what is the meaning of life? I don't know. But if someone says, I have no meaning, can you help me with that? The answer is absolutely yes.
We would answer the meaning of life question slightly differently, but that's fine.
And I want to attempt to just define 2 terms that you said there. One is purpose, and it doesn't have to be a perfect definition, but roughly what you mean by that. And then you said you introduced spiritual practice. What did you mean by that?
So what I think about is purpose is using something called factor analysis. So if you ask someone, do you have direction in life? Do you have purpose in life? Is there meaning in life? All 3 of those things cluster together to something. Even being in control correlates with that. So if you were in control of your life, your sense of purpose will increase. So there are a lot of these like words that we use, but all of these words tie back to some internal sense of what is happening in your life. So that's how I would describe purpose. In terms of spiritual practices, what my experience is that if you look at human beings who say they have purpose and human beings who don't have purpose, their lived experiences in life are different. So when I work with survivors of trauma, they have certain experiences. Like literally we can scientifically sort of measure this. You have a particular experience which destroys your sense of meaning in the world. I had a patient once who was attacked in a bathroom for about 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, this person had a sense of what they were doing in life, was dating, was doing well in college, had loving parents, and in 5 minutes, their compass for navigating the world was shattered. So if we sort of think about experience can lead to a loss of purpose, experience can also lead to a gain in purpose. Now, the spiritual tradition that I come from is all about particular practices that evoke certain subjective experiences. And as people have those experiences, their sense of purpose increases. And this is where I think there's a major shortcoming of science. So science can tell you what you should do, but it doesn't create experiences in and of itself, right? So we can scientifically understand that the highest risk factor for pornography addiction is having no meaning in life. But even if we know that, that doesn't help us like fix the problem. And there's always a question of how. Like, so we can discover something with science, but then there's a question of how do we actually like
in theory, you would use science that shows how you get out of that, right?
Move from point A to point B. And that's where I find spiritual practice is incredibly helpful.
Would you classify yourself as religious? Or
yes, I think so.
Greg?
Yep.
What is the perspective you bring to this conversation, and what's the lived experience, the academia that lends itself to that perspective?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of that fitting in, and I relate to a lot what you're saying, Alok, about people's challenges. Now, what's interesting to me about this whole discussion, since I'm a Christian, and I understand the world from a theistic perspective because I think it's the best explanation for the way things are.
Just to give a definition to that, theistic, what does that mean?
A personal God.
A God.
There is a personal God who is involved with the world. He made the world and he still maintains activity, as opposed to deistic, which just wound up the clock and let it go, okay? So my view is God is still involved. In fact, so involved that he actually came to earth in the person of Jesus of Nazareth to create a rescue plan. Now, what's interesting to me about this broader question, we can get into more details too, is that
I feel like religious speakers, talking heads, like I feel like they're failing to empathize with people who would otherwise be really compelled by the teachings and the wisdom of the religion. Yet when they always start out with like positing facts about history that, you know, people might think are, you know, less founded or just simply not founded. So it's more of like they're breaking like an ethic. They're breaking a standard of empirical evidence when they start off by saying, you know, something happened this way. They created humans in their image. I don't know, whatever it is. Like they start with that. So then now once you get to the stuff that could actually be helpful for everyone, regardless of whether or not Jesus actually existed or whatnot, like you've already lost the person, or you've made them now slightly more closed-minded when it comes to the benefits of what you might be offering. So yeah, I feel like that's a failure of the talk. Maybe it's so important to the brand that you have to push Jesus of Nazareth like right up ahead, but I don't know.
That it's not, if there is a God who made the world for a purpose with meaning, people can participate in that meaning and purpose even if they don't know God. They won't be experiencing what they were made for, which is to be in friendship with him, with the plan that he's made for their flourishing. But they still can flourish in some measure insofar as they touch on these objective features. But insofar as we are able, even without belief in God, to kind of get in that groove of the things that God made us for, the purposes that he intends, in light of being made like him in some way in his image, there's going to be a measure of satisfaction. But what they'll be missing is the ultimate, and that is that friendship with God and being restored in that.
Alex,
So
same question for you about your.
The other thing is, like, we could answer that, or we could translate exactly what that guy just said in a much more precise and practical way that doesn't actually involve faith. But yeah, unfortunately,
What you bring
we
to
don't
this
have that platform yet.
conversation in terms of your perspective, your experience, and maybe some of your sort of personal journey.
Well, for my own part, I was quite swept up in the new atheism movement, which was a mid-2000s publishing phenomenon with the likes of the Dawkins and the Hitchens of the world, saying that religion is evil and terrible, and I think promising an alternative, a kind of secular humanist utopia, that if you'll only throw off these oppressive religious systems, you will regain your spiritual autonomy and be able to assert yourself and the intrinsic meaning that you have within yourself. And people tried that, and it didn't seem to work. And I think that's because the new atheist movement was quite philosophically shallow. It didn't seriously engage with the existential component of religious belief and why it exists in the first place. And I think that is why it exists. I think humans are in a strange predicament due to the mystery of consciousness. We find ourselves, possibly uniquely amongst other animals, in a position of being mortal, being physically embodied, being in a world, but also knowing those things. It's one thing to experience the world, it's another thing to be aware that you're experiencing it. Josh Rasmussen once said, there's a difference between noticing a tree and noticing that you've noticed a tree. We have this sort of second order abstraction that we can do. So we know that death is coming, for example, and death makes a mockery of everything that we do. It seems to just obliterate any sense of purpose or meaning, because anything that we're building will ultimately, as far as we're concerned, be gone. And that may well be unique to human beings. And so I'm not the first to suggest that the principal motivating factor behind meaning-infused activities that humans do is an engagement in death denial or some kind of immortality project. People literally, for fear of, as a result of the knowledge that this will come to an end, engage in what we might call immortality projects. They engage in things which will outlast themselves, which give them a sense of escaping this death. The most obvious example is in religious traditions which literally promise immortality for your own soul. But if you look just practically at where people subjectively report finding meaning, they find it in their children. They might find it in their job, but they're unlikely to find it in their job if they're doing something they don't really care about. They'll find it in their job. Maybe they're like a barrister, and they find a lot of meaning in bringing justice into the world because they're participating in a system which they believe will outlast them and is bigger than them. So when people talk about meaning, we talk about transcendence. You know, something being above and beyond their own sort of material situation. And I think religion is the archetypal example of this, and I think it's why it evolves in the first place. There is this idea that we are living in a meaning crisis that has cropped up maybe in the past 100 years or so, or maybe in the last few hundred years or so, as a response to the Enlightenment and the decline of religion. I think that's far too easy. I think that's way too easy. I think that if there is such thing as a meaning crisis, it is literally the human condition and the reason why these projects were invented in the first place. I think
This is a good point, and it's kind of dawning on me that we're going to have to make a claim in part 3 let's just write this out as I think about it. We are going to need to make an argument for, I should say that, A, religion does actually provide a significant positive emotion goldmine for human beings. We are literally wired that way. B, we are in a position where we cannot actually embrace the blind faith of religion given all that we have discussed so far. So C, what should we do? We need to consider how we can rectify the, let's just say retain the positive aspects of religion, both the wisdom it provides and also the sense of community and purpose that we might be able to find elsewhere in more concrete ways. Something like that.
Literally speaking, what people are doing in religious traditions is realizing the finitude of their existence and therefore trying to commune with something
Can I add a
less
thought to
finite.
this?
Of course.
We have this hunger. And I have no reason to believe that any naturalistic explanation can explain the consciousness's hunger for meaning and significance, because that's all propositional. It's not molecules in motion.
What's naturalistic?
Let's go back here.
To commune with something.
That any naturalistic explanation can explain the consciousness's hunger for meaning and significance.
I think that's what evolution does. I think it's a pretty easy explanation. We already know so much about how evolution transpired and why we have very strong theories as to why things transpired in the way they have, why we have the certain mechanisms that we do when it comes to our survival. And yeah, and then obviously evolutionary psychology now needs to make this extra claim about religion as a, was this I don't want to, was this Brett Weinstein who was talking about the extended phenotype? But that's not his thing. So who was the person that brought up, oh, this was Dawkins, and then I got to get into this type of discussion at some point. Maybe this is gonna be a part 3 thing. We have to look into the whole is religion an extended phenotype. This whole discussion from, like, I don't know, 5 years ago that popped up. I think overall we're gonna want to keep Brett away from our document, though. But yeah. But we're gonna have to make this case, actually. We need to make the case how of why a hunger for meaning, I should say why we have a hunger for meaning. I think this will be a simple evolutionary argument. But let's see. We'll see when
Significant.
the
It's not
time comes.
propositional. It's not molecules in motion.
What's naturalistic mean?
Naturalistic just means nature, and that's all there is, basically. So you have molecules in motion, largely governed by natural law. There is no outside transcendent anything.
Largely.
There's no immaterial anything, certainly not an immaterial God that has started the process and sustains the process and gives life meaning. There either is meaning, object.
We might, I'm sorry, but we might have to skip past everything this guy says in this entire thing, unless there's a back and forth discussion. It's just not worth our time, unfortunately. I know that's so dismissive, but yeah.
Effectively or not. Okay.
But it might
If
be
not, then
useful to
it's up
see
us.
the
For example, a moment ago, you
counter.
said that if there is a creator God who brings us into existence, then you are designed and you are given purpose by God. And I think we need to investigate this a bit further. Because, for example, a quite sort of boring and overdone debate at the moment is the extent to which we are engaged in the production of potentially artificially conscious agents with artificial intelligence technologies. And there's all this discussion about whether or not these things can be conscious, like, whatever. But let's just suppose for a moment that they were. Let's suppose that I created an artificially intelligent machine and I gave it a purpose, and that purpose was to produce paperclips. And because of the development of artificial intelligence technology, it became conscious in a recognizable sense. It had an interior sense of self. It sort of had, say, feelings or emotions about the world. But it is just an AI robot whose entire purpose in life is to make paperclips. Now, I could say that because that AI was designed by a creator with a purpose that was explicitly given to it, that life is meaningful. But I think it would seem to most people that a life whose meaning consists in creating paperclips is not sufficient, is not enough to address what people really want. It's not just some kind of purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just even some kind of purpose which is given to you by an authoritative creative
Yeah,
source.
so can I respond
It's
to
something
that?
which is further than that. Yeah, but if I can just relate this to the God question,
Okay.
the problem that arises is that you have to answer the question of why God infuses life with the meaning that he gives it. It's either something which he has sort of arbitrarily plucked up and chosen to create, in which case we have this problem of arbitrariness.
I feel like
or no, or in fact,
This is a really weird panel where you that like this could really just turn into an Alex versus this Christian, and Dr. K is just gonna have to sit there and yeah, we'll see.
there is some reason why God had to give us a particular kind of meaning that's endemic to the human condition, that he had no choice but for that meaning, that more important kind of meaning, to be given to human life.
Yeah.
But if he was beholden to that, if he had to give us a particular kind of meaning,
I'm
it seems like
curious if Alex right here is like knowingly entertaining this guy. That, you know what? I think I've heard Alex more recently be a little more unclear about whether or not there could be a God or whatnot. So maybe not. Maybe he's
there's a standard of meaning
behaving
which is
entirely in
right,
good
right,
faith.
outside of God. So I'm not sure, in other words, the mechanism by which being created by someone who says this is your purpose would be fulfilling in the way that people want it to be.
The reason the paperclip illustration doesn't match is because it seems to me that you're subtly taking the thing that's conscious that makes paperclips and comparing it to a human being. And for human beings who seem to have a different purpose, I would argue, be consigned to make paperclips, well, that's dehumanizing to them.
What Alex did was only play on this guy's words, so that I don't think that this guy understood that. Though what Alex did was like it was almost like a semantic play. It was like, given what you've just said, I will show how you're not being precise enough, which is, pretty apt, but I don't know if this guy's gonna like pick up on that.
But if you have, just to follow your illustration, if you have a creator that makes something for a reason that the creator has in mind, then it's fulfilling its purpose perfectly. For a human being, that's not going to be satisfying, making paperclips. And a lot of people who are making paperclips are not satisfied with it, okay? I don't think it's arbitrary if God is making something for a purpose. If God decides that he wants to make creatures to be in friendship with him, because this reflects his loving character, and that purpose is to be in friendship with him, I don't see how that is somehow negligible or arbitrary at all. I guess you could have said that God could have done otherwise, but his love and desire for communion is seen to be an adequate explanation for that.
This is fascinating. So my first question is, what's the point of this conversation?
Yeah, okay. Dr.
Yeah,
K's living in the he's living up top here where this conversation could have gone down like a really bad, not bad, but like a really perhaps unproductive path right there, where we're now talking about the semantics of what purpose has the creator given or God given, and I think Dr. K has picked up on. We need to be very clear about what we're trying to talk about in this conversation, and yeah, I think that'll always benefit the conversation.
I think that the ultimate answer that we're looking for is it appears that the numbers around purpose and meaning are fluctuating at this moment in time. A lot of people are turning back to religion, as Alexis, we were just chatting about a second ago. And I guess there's two questions, which is one, understanding why that's happening, why there's this fluctuation, why we're seeing a mental health crisis around purpose and meaning. And the second is to try and figure out if there's a truth one can arrive at, if there's an objective truth that exists.
Yes. So for y'all, I'm curious, when y'all show up here, like, what is the purpose for y'all showing up?
Yeah, that's even better. Oh my gosh. Dr. K's living in a different world.
Y'all show up here, like, what is the purpose for y'all showing up?
Literally trying to discover, like, it's the stated purpose,
Yeah.
right? It's literally just artificially given purpose by being designed in a particular way. We're going to get together and we're going to have a conversation and see if we can figure out this meaning stuff, right?
Awesome.
And by the way, like, we're not going to solve that problem. I think it's worth pointing out that, like, these conversations have to be exploratory and subjective. If anybody thinks that the four of us sat at this table are going to solve the meaning crisis and give people a 5-step guide to finding meaning in their life, and that will be the sort of case closed.
That's literally what we're going to do. It's not going to be 5 steps, I'll tell you that. But yeah, the goal is to actually make it pretty clear, and like the challenge is making it accessible and simple, so that's what's up in front of me right now. It's going to be making this step plan, whatever this is going to be, as simple as possible. And it's already not simple. It's already too not simple. Like a lot of the information that allows you to actually pursue something that's meaningful in life comes from understanding why things will become meaningful, which is all part one stuff, which is a little bit inaccessible. I tried to make it as accessible as possible, but you have to talk about the brain. You got to talk about a little bit of philosophy in there. Like there's things that you have to talk. You have to, like, even just understanding evolution is a little too inaccessible, unfortunately. So the goal is going to be to, with that said, still make what we do in part 3 compelling and useful and hopefully explanatory enough. So there will need to be some sort of clear plan that anyone can take regardless of their circumstances, that they can deploy in their life, that will lead them towards what they're looking for. A meaningful, emotionally rewarding, or morally good life. And it needs to set their expectations also properly. It's not going to be like, okay, you apply these things and tomorrow you're going to feel like it's all done. It's going to be like you are now embarking on a path that is like the faith is going to have to be in science, in the words themselves, like in the like there's going to be faith in the meaning of these very words that you're reading here. And yeah, hopefully people would consider, and faith, and yeah, we're going to have to even consider what that, actually, this is all stuff that I should be writing down. We're going to have to make it clear. We need to make it clear that this won't be a 2-day process. We need to set expectations that this will be a lifelong challenge with the upside of a lifelong pursuit and reward, rewarding pursuit. Okay, this can leverage our discussion of motivation from part 2. What else did I say earlier? The expectations are huge because people can get down based on the expectations. We need to specifically point out the types of emotions that we may feel as we are on the right path, that might, oh, this is actually a weird thing to say. We have to specifically make clear what we should expect, because we may still have feelings of displeasure for a little while. So having some sort of simple, effective lighthouse would be crucial. It's like, what are we actually looking for in this journey now? And that's a question that I'm gonna have to figure out. We're gonna have to look into that science, and hopefully hopefully a lot of things become clear as we really explore part 2.
Then they're delusional.
I don't know if I agree that we can't find an answer, but we'll talk about
Well,
it.
this is what I wanted to speak to.
Oh, Dr. K. Okay, so I think Dr. K is kind of aligned with us in this regard, and I think that was apparent in the way that he introduced himself, where he was like, hey, like we actually do apply strategies to my patients and they work. So, I mean, perhaps unless he's actually done, the rigorous empirical research, experimentation, then he can't say with high certainty that it will work on each person that comes into his office, but he's certainly more sure than giving them telling them to just be religious and get on their way. At least I imagine he would be.
To it. If obviously we're talking about this broader issue of meaning and purpose, all right? And as I mentioned earlier, there either is an objective one or it's only subjective, okay? If it is an objective one, this is about the most important thing that anyone can ever find out about their life, if they were created for a reason. In my view, the reason I'm here is because I'm convinced that that's the case, and I'm willing to give reasons why, okay? But I don't think, I'm sympathetic to the concern that you can't sit around a table and in 2 or 3 hours solve the problem for any individual, because people going through the process of trying to figure these things out, it takes a long time as they put the pieces together. But I think there's a lot of people in the world that think they have put it together and they've come to conclusions about ultimate meaning.
Well, so this is a discussion about, or a nuance about abstraction. It's not that you find the concrete things. Actually, you know what? In some sense, you do find concrete things, like being healthy and exercising do contribute to your mental health, regardless of who you are. That's just a human thing, but not there's a little more nuance to that. Not necessarily so, because obviously there's a lot of loss aversion, people who perhaps aren't eating as healthy. Like, to be healthy would actually cause a lot of negative emotion. So yeah, you know what? I take back what I said. The point is that there's like you can give like a more abstract tool set where it's like, okay, these are all a bunch of things that you could try to do, and this is how you could try to do them. This is how you can slowly, iteratively affect your life in a way that leads into a positive direction. It's not going to be just, telling you to do these 5 things, like concrete things. But you know what? Like things like gratitude, that'll help everyone. Yeah, that's a concrete thing. Like meditation in theory would help anyone. Exercise would help anyone. And I guess you could be upset that you're doing exercise, but yeah, once again, I mean, I guess you could be upset that you're doing any of these things. It's like, oh, I'm losing time in my day to do gratitude.
Meaning and purpose, and they don't come to my own conclusions, but many have. So what I would hate to do is leave people with a feeling like we can all search and the glory is in the search, but if you think you found the answer, then you haven't. Of course, this to me is a nihilistic enterprise then. I think it's possible to come to conclusions.
Yeah.
I think so too, to be clear. But I think what I'm trying to say is this will be something that one will experience for themselves and will discover for themselves in their own life. It's not going to be something that, you know, there's that old was it Linchi, the sort of the Buddhist koan that says, if you meet the Buddha, kill him. The idea being that, you know, if you think that the kind of enlightenment which is necessary to spiritual fulfillment can be found through some kind of guru, you're missing the mark. It's something that you need to do for yourself.
But isn't that statement itself meant to be a truth about spirituality that you can actually count on?
Can I jump in? I just want to make sure I understand y'all's point. So you're saying that the search for purpose, first of all, is never going to go away, like, is a human condition, right?
Yes.
So as humanity will never find its purpose.
I can tell you why if you like.
No, I don't even know why yet.
I think individuals can, but humanity.
That's
can't.
what I'm just making sure I understand, right? So an individual can find their purpose, but as humanity, it's never going to be solved. And then you said something about purpose being tied to opposing to death in some way. So transcending death, that human beings basically look for purpose because death is inevitable, and if we can find purpose, then we can give our life meaning. But if we die and I don't leave something behind, can you talk a little bit about that?
This is essentially a version of Ernest Becker's denial of death hypothesis, which famously suggests that the motivation for a great deal of human behavior is, at least human behavior outside of immediate sensory concerns like eating and stuff like that, anything that humans engage in on a societal level, on an abstract level, is ultimately motivated by an apprehension of death. I think that's...
This is where I think our study of Heidegger actually allows us to be a little more apt on this discussion. I'm probably not going to go into this unless anyone's actually here and interested in that, because it takes us down a path. But yeah, just like yo, cool dude, Arya, what's good? Welcome. We're just kind of listening through this thing. I am literally in the business of trying to figure out this question of the path for life, and this is what they're talking about. So I am rather interested in what is going to transpire here. But I am stoked about Alex O'Connor and Dr. K.
It's probably too simple, but it's definitely a contributing factor. I think that, for example, put it this way, right? Here's an example that comes from, I think his name's Scheffler, and he has this interesting thought experiment. Suppose, I don't know, maybe you're engaged in writing a book. Suppose you discovered, and this probably won't be the case for you because you believe in an afterlife, but suppose that you're an atheist for a moment. Suppose it were the case that you discovered that after you die, a meteor is going to come and wipe out all life on Earth. Everybody's going to die almost instantly after you do, but you'll be dead. So you will live your entire life as it was anyway, and suppose the rest of the world doesn't even know this is going to happen. But you're told this is going to be the case. Would that motivate you to write your book more or less? Most people say that it would seem a bit pointless now. What's the point now in writing this book? What's the point in having children if they're going to die 30 days after I'm gone? What's the point in doing any of these things? What will they still do? They'll still do the sensory stuff. They'll still eat. They'll still have sex. They'll still sleep, this kind of stuff. But the typically meaning-laden activities of life, they would certainly be demotivated to do. And it's an interesting thought experiment to give us some insight as to the fact that, well, maybe this means that, at least in part, the motivation for these actions in the first place is that they will extend beyond our death.
This is actually a fun thought experiment. Like, if I knew that was the case, then yeah, it probably would be. It would affect what I orient my life towards. It would probably be towards short-term changes or gains. Like perhaps I would like donate more immediately. If there is an afterlife, then what is a before life? Ooh, yeah. I mean, this is the type of question where I guess I just have to be transparent. Where I think that, you know, when we die, our brain stops working, and that's kind of it. We just cease. And that was the same state prior to when we were conceived or born. Ask the Pope. Yeah, we should ask the Pope. He seems pretty based right now. But yeah. Though there are religions that do believe, I think that there are like, you know, a sequence of lives. So before life could be like another life, you know. I guess this is just reincarnation. But yeah, unfortunately, the science does not suggest that we have either.
I agree with so much of what y'all say, and I also like hard disagree with some of the fundamentals. So let's say you have this example.
If there is an afterlife, then why send people to Earth, then send them to the afterlife? Yeah, why not just send them to the afterlife? True. I'm sure religious folk, including the guy here, would give you answers to that question. Like just faithfully assuming that there is some purpose for us to be on Earth, that we needed to exist for some reason. But yeah, unfortunately, evolution and the material world just gives us a better, or I would say just a more empirical and predictable understanding of why we are here. But yeah, no, what you're saying is a good point. I do agree with the logic there.
Of like, I'm gonna write a book and then the world is gonna end 30 days later.
Yes.
And so you say, because a lot of what you're talking about is like what people say, right?
Yep.
So you'll say like, okay, so like people would say that this is a waste of time and I'm not gonna do it if the world ends in 30 days. And you're also saying people is an everlasting thing or struggling with purpose, right? You're saying both of these things. So here's my question to you. If you tell someone, you're writing this book, let's say you write it and then you die, because we'll simplify the example, and then 30 days later the world ends. Let's take two people, one who says, I'm gonna write it anyway, and one who says, there's no point. Which one of those two people do you think has a greater sense of purpose?
Probably the former.
Absolutely. So this is the key thing. Purpose is absolutely, because I love that you're asking about mechanisms, and I think maybe that's what I can provide. I think that's actually the answer, right? So it's not that people believe, and I think you're right, that the reason that this is a perennial problem is because most people do not live a life where they understand how purpose works. And what I think is really fascinating about sort of like this scientific clinical approach, like if you ask me, can I help people find meaning and purpose? I don't know. But if you ask me, can I help a person? The answer is absolutely. And we have like particular scientific things, and this is where it's really counterintuitive.
What he's saying right now, by the way, is just this is the premise for our entire document. We are going to attempt to leverage science and a little bit of philosophy to provide hopefully an accessible and compelling path for each person to apply, within their own individual life. I have watched all of O'Connor's debates and vids, also Genetically Modified Skeptic and Unsolicited Advice. Are those his podcasts? Have I watched all of the Jubilee vids? I think I've seen his Jubilee vid. I thought I enjoyed that a lot. I remember that was maybe a couple months ago. Those are other YouTubers. Oh, I see. Genetically Modified Skeptic and Unsolicited Advice. I'm largely satisfied with him, and I'm actually stoked that we're getting more Alex and Dr. K talk. Dr. K has so far in this conversation just been absolutely based. He's just he's seeing this field clearly. Honestly, if you're interested in psychology, most of the Surrounded series is interesting. The Surrounded series is Surrounded now. Is that a name? Or I need to look this up. By Jubilee. Oh, I see. Yep. I guess the one issue though is, especially this whole channel is kind of oriented around this document, and it's very like individual focused. It's how can each person kind of understand the world and their freedom within it, how they can identify and reach their goals, and then ultimately how they can determine a path for life. We really aren't allowed to talk about like politics and stuff like this in this document, and that's a lot of what I see Jubilee showcasing, which is a lot of fun. I do watch those as well, but I think I would have to be looking specifically out for ones that are particularly practical in this sense. Also, even though those are very entertaining and interesting, I don't know if those types of discussions are the most likely to lead to like a furthering of an understanding. Granted, I've seen different speakers on there be more or less gracious and attempting to actually showcase their view on the matter. But it's usually like just the premise makes everyone a little more defensive, it seems. And also the group of people they usually bring in are quite passionate about their position. So, I get that. If you look at just the political views, it does not align. You should consider the fact on how stringent value systems are in stunting growth and knowledge. Yep. Yeah, I think one of the principles that we're going to have to push is some sort of openness, some sort of possibility that you could be wrong about the things that you feel most adamant about. But yeah, what is the way of navigating that? And that's a discussion to be had. That's what you truly understand from the series. Yep. Oh yeah. No, I agree. Also, a main point is people's reliance on uneducated authorities, which is a sad reality. I agree completely. Yeah. So one of the things that so I should just say that we have done part one. Part one is drafted. One of the cool things that we did explore in part one is how we do learn and how literally our understanding changes over time and what affects that process. And the thing that people don't quite realize is it's very emotion driven. It's very social driven. So, what you do end up seeing, if you're watching a certain, information diet is really important. We actually don't talk about information diet yet. I think we're going to talk about information diet in part 3. But yeah, what you're seeing, and perhaps you're seeing people tell you things with high conviction, and the things that they're saying sound logical. That's going to affect your learning, regardless of whether or not that information is quote unquote right. Yeah, I know. That's why I told you to watch the other vids. It's a good reference. Right. You can really explore how anecdotal preference is put on knowledge gained. Yup, it's so huge. It's literally the mechanisms of the human brain. It doesn't maximize empirical truth as we value it in today. That's certainly not what its main priority is. If I talk about my experience meeting God, I could start a religion and people would follow. Right? That stuff is compelling. Because I have an anecdote. Yeah. I mean, you just have to be trustworthy. It comes down to charisma at that point. How effective can you spread that message? That would be a funny comedy series. There's a guy that's so uncharismatic, but he's able to talk to God. He's seeing miracles happen. He knows for sure that some religion's real, but he just can't spread it to he can't tell anyone, or he's trying to, but he's just not able to convince anyone that what he's seeing is right. Said everyone who agreed. Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, there's something to be said about how compelling he was, just in speech and charisma. So yeah, and then obviously the other thing to discuss about that time, which is terrible, is just the fact that so many people changed their moral foundation based on what they saw other people doing, and because it felt socially fine, that your conscience is not going to yell at you. It's important to realize that our conscience is calibrated based on what we're experiencing. And so if there's not going to be a negative emotion backlash when considering different ideas or making sense of what you've done, then yeah, it's not going to, there's nothing to stop you. All right, but that tells you what we need to educate people more. I also feel that's the separation of church and state in most countries is now broken. yeah, unfortunately, I don't know too much about the politics stuff. Religious power is creeping into education and politics everywhere. Yep. Yeah, so the question is, how do you go about that education? That's what I'm trying here. The goal is to, well, the goal right now is really to figure the stuff out, and then we'll really, actually, at the same time, I'm also trying to figure out what's the best way to educate. Right now, I've just literally this month or last month started making videos of just kind of reading through this thing and just fun videos for this channel. But it's gonna, like, one of my tasks coming up is gonna be, how do I make short form content that goes over the practical science and philosophy that we discuss in such a way that is actually enjoyable, so that you get this TikTok and you're actually stoked to learn something really short and helpful. So that's going to be the challenge, but I think it's doable. I think this stuff is really, really practical. So it's just going to come down to figuring out how to do it. But we got language models on our side, so that's pretty helpful.
So a big part of like finding purpose is doing particular things, and if you do those things, the likelihood.
I have to say this, but honestly, the most scientific development we saw was under the USSR. That's what drove scientific innovation worldwide. I imagine there's like probably a book on that, like with that premise. Yeah, I guess regardless though, now we're in this position where we do have so much science. We have the science to explain all of these things. And yet it's still difficult to sell that science. So we need more charismatic educators that figure out how to actually sell this stuff. We need salesmen. We need science salesmen. That's what we need.
Likelihood that you will increase your sense of purpose in life, which is another thing that's very counterintuitive to people. Purpose is not binary; it's quantifiable. It's like a scale. So if I were to ask the three of y'all, right, maybe let's do this, not thought experiment, but this practical experiment. Do you know your purpose in life? Like, how confident are you that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in life?
How confident am I about the God part, or that I'm doing the things that are appropriate?
How confident are you that you're doing what God wants you to do?
Well, in that general sense, extremely confident, or else I wouldn't be doing it.
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
So, Stephen, what about you, bro?
About 5 out of 10.
I knew it. Okay, right. So, Alex?
I don't want to be difficult, but I kind of reject the grammar of the question.
Awesome.
Oh.
Checked away, bro.
I think it's what a logician would call an exponable statement, something which needs to be broken down. You asked, do I know my own purpose? That assumes that there is a purpose to know. It's a bit like, the comparison I would give is if I asked you the question, the classic example in logic is the King of France bold, yes or no?
I can rephrase my question if you have
Please.
problems with my question. So, do you have a lived experience of something called purpose?
Oh, well, look, I think purpose is having some kind of reason to act or be.
Yeah.
And I certainly subjectively am motivated to do things. I think everybody is, otherwise you literally wouldn't be able to do anything. But it's a bit foggy to me what, psychologically speaking, on a personal level, that fundamental motivation actually is.
Wouldn't purpose be more the goal rather than the reason to act?
Yeah, I think Alex is being a little difficult here, but yeah, I wonder what would be the best formulation of this question. Like, can you reflect upon the concrete things that you feel like you ought to do? Like that might be a more apt way of saying, or like a more clear way of saying it. No, I mean, Alex could break down what ought to do means, but I don't know. I think he would be fine with that question. Here we go. Okay, honestly, I do feel first we need to make sure the government is limited to people who have a master's or PhD in poli-sci and economics or other important majors to run the country. My only response to that is it might take a little time before we get there. So I think we can't wait. I think we do need to do these other things first and hope that it affects that. Like, hopefully, I mean, I don't think that, you need a master's or a PhD to understand these concepts really well. Perhaps I could be an example. I mean, I have the master's in computer science, but I don't have the master's in psychology or neuroscience. But it is doable to just get a book and read and figure out what's going on. So yeah, the goal is to just make people At least you have a master's degree. Yeah, but it's a very different topic. I don't know if it. What a master's degree selects for is perhaps the ability to do work. So like it's like a discipline. Like that might be the analogy between what it selects for. Most people flunk out of college and run for government. Wow. All right. This Alex does well. He makes sure that every vague term is quantified. Yeah, I do agree that that's important. I don't think that question required that level of breaking down the ambiguity. I think that question was pretty clear in terms of what Dr. K was really getting at, and also in the way that everyone else answered that question. I think that was pretty clear. But yeah, if you stick around on this channel, you'll find that I am very similar in the fact that there are questions where you have to break down the meaning, and I should say that there are questions that are quite ambiguous, and it's important to break down what you could possibly mean, because everyone's going to infer this in different ways. Now, you know what? The thing I will give Alex here is that when you're a content creator that's really popular, like 1.2 million views, like even though I might think that it was very clear what they were talking about, that doesn't mean that, everyone's going to be, I'm speculating. So what Alex did in spirit would be to reduce the amount of ambiguity to make sure that more people who are watching this thing understand exactly what he's getting at. I guess my concern with the way that he went about it is he might have made it a little more difficult for people to understand than what people might just simply infer by the original question. But he is nitpicky, but honestly, if you have debated enough with religious zealots, it's kind of instinctive to do what he does. Right, this is why I think it would be great for this guy to not be here and him to just talk with Dr. K, because I don't think Dr. K deserves that type of treatment, but I think this guy deserves that type of treatment. Because, yeah, the stuff that he's talking about isn't like founded in anything clear either. It's rather ambiguous and faith-based and speculative.
What you're trying to accomplish?
It's a semantic thing, but that's why it depends what you mean by the word.
No,
purpose.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So, and I don't know what I mean with the word purpose, which is part of this challenge. But okay, so like I'm just wondering. So like so a lot of people are motivated to act. Everyone is motivated to act every day, right? I get out of bed, I need to take a dump, but my guess is that if we were to administer a scientifically validated instrument that measures your subjective sense of purpose, direction in life, that would be north of 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Do you think that's fair, or is that something that you don't?
Maybe, yeah. I
Why
don't
not
know.
just survey?
When you wake up, do you feel like you know what you want to do and what's going on, and you're like doing good work? Like I'm asking about the subjective.
Not
thing.
on a grand sense. I'm quite agnostic. I mean, I'm sort of.
I'm not talking about. Okay, maybe.
It depends. I really don't know what you mean.
No, perfect. Okay, so not on a grand sense, but on some other sense. Yes.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I think that this is like.
So the tricky thing about the way that I guess the way that Alex is answering this question is it almost presupposes that there could be a grand sense that is separate from your experience. So for me, I think that, just the individual's experience of knowing what they need to do in their life, regardless of, whether or not, whatever external stuff there is, God or no God, like that's enough to answer that question. At least as far as I'm concerned. Like I'm not even entertaining this idea of there being some transcendent objective truth that puts my the possibility of me doing certain things as purposeful or necessary. This is what's good about Dr. K. He doesn't always assume he is correct majorly. He admits he is wrong, or what he says could be framed better. Yeah, Dr. K seems to be so well equipped, I should say, to navigate these types of discussions, which is, just incredibly impressive. I would certainly love to talk to him.
I think this is beautiful because I think what we have here is like not on a grand sense. So I think on a grand sense you're there, right? But you're absolutely motivated by particular things. So I think this is the first thing about purpose.
Can I a clarification real
Sure.
quickly? Yeah, on a grand sense, yes, but there are distinctions that you were referring to a few moments ago.
Great.
There are a lot of things that are dissatisfying in my life, but in terms of being on the right course, that's part of what life is. Being on the right course, lots of crazy stuff that's happening in between.
Cool. So like the first thing that I've kind of noticed in my work is that I don't know whether a grander purpose exists or not. I think that's a lovely discussion that I want to continue to have with you. But I'm sort of, here's where I'm sort of coming from in this discussion. Stephen started this out with some really scary statistics that we're seeing, right? There's a mental health crisis. I think a lot of what we're seeing is while it may be perennial, I think it's like seems more acute right now.
Yes.
Maybe that's because of the atheist materialism, whatever, I'm not quite sure. But this is a problem. So just sharing where I'm coming from, my hope is that someone who is watching this will have moved forward some vague percentage points. I'm shooting for about 20% in their personal quest for purpose. And I think a big part of what I'm going to try to contribute here today is my understanding of like how to do that. That this is a quantifiable thing that we can sort of see at this table. People are sort of like at different places. And so the first thing that I kind of want to point out is I don't know whether there's purpose or not, but as a human condition, there is something that each of us feel or experience that gives us an answer, right? So you're like at 10, but what that means is that something is going on in your mind, something is going on in your heart, something is going on in your body where you wake up and you feel like you.
Yo, thanks for the follow. Then you have Jordan Peterson on the other end of the spectrum. Uh-oh. Yeah, Jordan Peterson is an interesting one. I'm still stoked about Maps of Meaning, but I really haven't kept up with him in the past 5 years, I don't think. But yeah, heads up, right now every Monday we're watching Maps of Meaning Mondays. He's kind of what got me into the philosophy space. So he's kind of the final boss of making sure that everything that he discussed in Maps of Meaning is incorporated somehow in this document, unless it's not necessary. There are some things that he talks about that are just, speculative and just not necessary to be, or even appropriate to be included. But there's still useful stuff to gain from those lectures, I would assert. Hey, nice. Got to call it a day, but I love the discussion now. I got to go figure out how the universe works. These papers don't write themselves. Oh man, what are these papers about? Are you in the education system right now? Quantum field theory, awesome. Very cool. Not an educator. Well, I guess I meant like, are you a student right now? But yeah, that is pretty sweet. Yeah, I'm curious then. But yeah, one of my papers just got published. Very sweet, awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, funny enough, we've got like 5 videos on our channel on YouTube, and one of them is going through the prospect of quantum consciousness. So I'm kind of curious where you fall on that one. The general conclusion was that it's probably not appropriate in our discussion about consciousness and certainly what's practical for us to actually apply in some sort of practical framework about how understanding and it's just a video. It's just a video. It was just a video from Stream, actually. I was just reading through something. But yeah, I would highly recommend you check out part 1 of this document. I think we absolutely cooked. But yeah, enjoy. Good luck. From our discussion, how old do you think I am? 40. I wouldn't have said 40. I would have said 24. But I don't know. I don't think I'm good at guessing ages across. Like, I literally don't know anything about you. I'm basing that age literally on the fact that you're writing a paper. It's like college years plus 2, and then that's where the guess is. Oh, so you believe I'm basically done with my master's? Oh, that's a good question, actually. That's a good point. I don't know how long that takes, to be honest. Yeah, if you're getting published, then I would assume that you're pretty far in, right? Is that common for like, I don't know, grads or early grads or even undergrads to be published? Unless you're just excelling. Maybe I should have overestimated you. I should have just said that you were like 18 prodigy. And yeah, and quantum field theory, like that's not. I did computer science undergrad and grad. That was pretty much it. I was actually lucky enough. They had a system where you could do both at the same time. It was a BSMS program, so I just needed to take more classes while I was there, and was able to get them both in the years that I was there. No, I mean, what did you do? Did you write papers? No, actually, I did write one paper, but it wasn't required to do a thesis of any kind. I did a independent study on peer grading mechanisms, which is something I hope to one day incorporate in this channel. And so I wrote like what I thought was a pretty cool paper on that. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, honestly, it was, it wasn't the most difficult school, so I'm not going to laud. Is that the word? I'm not going to laud my degree. Praise. Yeah, look at that. I'm not going to laud my degree, especially in a public context. Yeah, this is a great word. All right. Will be prepared to be blown away. Poof. I am 17. Very nice. Very cool. So was this some type of accelerated thing where you were able to get, I don't know, I guess are you undergrad, or is this like a paper on in high school? Like, is this a... Oh, nice. Not just wrote a paper on my own. Very cool. Very cool. What was the... I guess what's the interest here in quantum field theory? I guess, yeah. What's the premise? Or is it more like educational, just kind of explanatory, or is there like some sort of implication that you're deriving from what you see to be essentially Higgs field behavior and beyond standard model interactions? Okay, so we're getting slightly out of my intuitions. Proposal on Higgs behavior in certain space-time regions. Cool. Okay, so this would be a very classical type of academic paper where you're furthering some part of the field. Nice. Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool to be doing that on your own. And yeah, very. I think it's just generally great to write. I mean, it kind of sounds like I'm saying that because I've been writing for, a little while on this channel, but it's been quite beneficial to get the school is not that helpful. Nice. It just helps you think. It helps you think. It helps you learn. And it's a gold mine for meaning. So, these guys are figuring out the question of purpose, and we're going to have to talk about what it might mean for our lives to feel meaningful and emotionally rewarding. And regardless, there are just certain gold mines that we can leverage. And one of those is a project like that. School's not, nor will even a master's course with this paper. Sorry if I don't share the paper because I don't want to dox myself. Oh, you're totally fine. I don't know if I would be able to understand. Honestly, I haven't gone that deep into quantum physics. I've only read a little bit about many worlds and now quantum consciousness. So, but yeah, that is pretty cool. Well, certainly good luck, and I hope it's a productive session.
You have purpose. Steven wakes up and he's like at a...
Honestly, it's just mumbo jumbo and nonsense maths and magic. It's only held together by hopes and dreams. Even I don't understand what I wrote. That's pretty Pretty funny. Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah, I also don't quite understand like the limits of that field right now, where I know there's some speculation that it's going in the wrong direction, with string theory and whatnot. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure like what is the current trajectory or progress of quantum physics. Is like the most significant outcome like quantum computing, or does quantum computing literally only require like basic quantum mechanics and perhaps just after that it's just building the necessary parts? I'm not sure. It's much more basic. Okay. Yeah, I imagine just in general in terms of quantum physics, that's like the most significant empirical outcome to come from the field, other than obviously a significant change in our science. Yeah, I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Do we like gain a lot of predictive utility out of quantum physics? Is to go smaller, like smaller in terms of we went smaller than an atom to subatomic particles. We have to go smaller than that. And then, yeah, what would be the trajectory there? Is it just the technology of sensing? Like, we need better sensors for incredibly small things. A few hundred years ago, we thought there was no use to know about molecules. Then we thought no use for atoms. Right. Yep. Yeah, there's always a story there. But as we progress, we exhaust the utility of these particles. Yep. And then in some like areas, it almost doesn't. It is not necessary to go that deep. Certainly, like when you're talking about, I don't know, basic biology. It's really not necessary to go too much deeper than I feel like molecules. I feel like molecules is a good level. Onion Helmet, what's good? Popping in with the immediate YouTube link. We're going Kiwis all the way right now. And the more control we have over the fundamental building blocks, the more we control the universe. Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's going to be some crazy products coming down the pipeline if we can learn more about quantum physics.
Why I love kiwi birds so heavily.
Oh my gosh.
Baby kiwi birds. Look at that little guy, man. I'm gonna cry. Mankura.
What is happening here?
Manu Kura. What is happening? There he is.
He just answered. He asked the same question. Found this yesterday. I had to save it. Nice. Are we a Kiwi channel now?
What are you doing to him? What are you feeding him? Oh my God! You're gonna choke him. Look at the cloak on him. I love him. Here we go. They're always eating fruits and seeds and.
This voice is a little jarring, or it's a little grating, I should say.
What is this about? Oh my God! He's having a seizure.
Are these all Kiwis? Is this still a Kiwi?
No, you put duct tape over his face. What am I watching? I don't feel comfortable watching. I'm gonna leave. I did not feel comfortable watching that. No, I didn't like that one. I didn't like that.
This guy literally prepared like a PowerPoint for this.
Is this a zip bomb? What the fuck?
Oh, is this the same? Is this the same noise?
Click this. How? What is this gonna take me to? Here, all right, only one way to find out. Here we go. All right. So this. Oh my God. All right.
Oh, this is a different voice, or this is a different sound than we heard it last time.
At least my computer's all right.
All Kiwis all the way.
Treadmill. Okay. Treadmill. Oh my God. He's moving kind of slowly, to be honest. He's moving. They're taking flag photography. Oh, here we go. He's getting to the edge. Oh, it ended. He didn't make it, but he tried his best. He's gonna make it to the green thing. Oh no, not quite. He's about there. He's gonna make it. Here we go.
I feel like they don't want the attention, right? Didn't we talk about that? How they want to be like kind of hidden?
I love these guys. I love you guys.
Jeez.
Take what you have a good day.
Was this This is kind of just a random thing to point out, but do you think this was made pre-AI? Like, was it easy to make this type of thing pre-AI? Because this is the type of thing people make all the time now. These might all be AI images. I'm not sure. Oh, definitely yeah, when was this? This was 1 year ago. It's not too long ago. That is 2010 coded all over it. Yeah, maybe we should make some Kiwi images. All right, so Onion Helmet, we've been watching this this video because I think it's gonna have. I mean, so far it has had some useful bits towards what we're gonna have to think about in part 3. Also, by the way, this morning I kind of popped off and I incorporated all that new stuff into the. Oh, this is actually. Yeah, into the embodied cognition section, which is now called, if I could find it, homeostasis and embodied cognition. So now it actually incorporates the stuff I was talking about in a pretty excellent way, if I do say so myself. So yeah, we're cooking. I'm ready for the reading tomorrow morning. It might be a little. This section I think takes a little while to read, so it could be a longer video. I'm not sure, maybe an hour. But we'll see. I saw this video in my recommended and watched the intro a bit and it was like 3 hours. Oh, right. Yeah, what can they possibly... That's the thing. It's like, what can they possibly say? And I'm at the point where whenever the guy that's a Christian here talks, we might want to just skip past him. Unless, of course, he's like actually having a debate/discussion with one of the other guys, because then it's useful to just kind of see what they do to react to what he says. But yeah, the neat thing is that Dr. K kind of has like how Dr. K describes his view on this is pretty close to how we talk about this document, like the very premise of leveraging stuff that we can learn through science. I mean, I guess he doesn't. He has spirituality, and we'll put in philosophy for that, but. Yeah, like he thinks that there's very clear things that we could do for someone to give them a sense of meaning and, an more emotionally rewarding life, which is what we're going to be looking for. So, yeah, I've just kind of been running through this. I do have to leave at some point. Going to go to a movie tonight, which is pretty exciting. But what time would I have to go to this movie? Give me 1 second. I have to actually look up how far away this theater is. What am I watching? I'm watching that new Leo movie. Another battle after another. Another battle. One battle after another. That's it. Yep. There's a new Leo movie. Absolutely. And it's getting some great reviews. I did see it actually already, and I would recommend. It's a little odd in the beginning. You get this sense of like you have no idea where the movie's going, but I swear it'll definitely you'll be happy that you had seen it. No, it's not even a comedy. It's a pretty serious movie. Oh, it says comedy here. I mean, it's I think it's satirical. Like it's a little satirical. Like it's a serious movie in a somewhat satirical world. But it's also a pretty realistic world in some sense. Like I don't know how to describe it, but the acting though is largely not like, it's not like a comedy acting. It's like they're being serious, but the premise is a little enunciated for this world. But yeah, it'll make you feel a certain way, and there are certain moments that you'd be like, oh, that was really cool. I don't know if you've seen the movie Children of Men, which I would highly recommend. But there are similar scenes in this movie where there's just very tense scenes where you're following something going down and you're on the edge of your seat, like, okay, what is going to happen here? And yeah, and in a very raw way too. There's a lot, like, there's a kind of a rawness that I would commend the movie for having. But I saw it not in IMAX, so I want to go see it again in IMAX with some friends. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And that is okay. All right, so when I went, the movie started 30 minutes after its start time. So when do I want to get to the theater then? Yeah, it was crazy. It was 30. I don't know. Is that something that all theaters do, or was that just something to do with that theater? Like, should I expect that from an IMAX theater? Because yeah, it was kind of crazy that we had to wait that long. I'm not sure. I guess it would be worth to just be there early just in case, which is a bummer. So I guess departure time is going to be 7:40. Maybe 5-10 mins max. Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever had to wait 30 minutes. Well, I know they do. They usually start running the previews around then, which usually I think it's common for it to take like 15 minutes. But yeah, maybe the theater is like not maybe the theater was not popular, so they had to get more ads in to make it worth the time. So maybe I shouldn't count on it being 30 minutes. So I'm actually going to count on arriving at the theater 5 minutes after the start time. But that might be a little cutting it. I'm not sure. We'll see. All right. Well, let's get his. I don't think I'm going to do any Hades prior to that. I don't think it would be worth. It would be mid-run. Chances are I'll just do a Hades stream tomorrow morning because I'm going to be fiending for some Hades after I film the video. Well, the IMAX stock is up 70%. Wow. So they might be doing something right. Yeah. Well, so the theater that was 30 minutes late wasn't the IMAX. It was a non-IMAX. Oh, I take that back. The market is okay. So maybe IMAX should be doing more previews. That would get them the profits they need. All right, I don't even remember what was going on in this thing. I think so far Dr. K has been so based at making sure that this conversation stays on track.
A 5 out of 10. So he's getting some signals in that area, some signals not in that area. You have some signals in that direction too. You know why you're showing up at this podcast. You've got a book that you're working on. Awesome. Can't wait to read it. But on a grander sense, you're like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, Alex has a book. We got to check that out. Alex O'Connor book. When? Maybe it's not far enough yet. Oh.
People don't realize that your thinking patterns are conditioned by your culture. We live within a culture.
Is this even his book? No, this is a different guy entirely. All right. Profits or not, people are just buy any stock nowadays. You ever dabble in options? The GameStops? I actually won on the GameStop saga. I timed the market correctly. What was that about? It was stupid. I don't remember what my reasoning was for when I got in, when I got out, but it was definitely a success in that regard. But otherwise, I don't really time the market at all. I'm very boring with my investments. It's just dollar cost averaging into the S&P 500. Pretty lame, but pretty conservative. You can't time the market. I agree. Unless you do. But it's just total luck at that point.
Or whatever. So this is sort of like this quantifiable thing.
And you?
I'm going to let y'all guess. Where would you put me out of 10?
I don't like to psychologize people.
It's okay if you don't like to. Will you?
I mean, I just met you. I don't know. I have no idea what sense of meaning you have in your life.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I'm just motivated to try and find out.
So I think
truth.
the audience can guess too.
Yeah, I would say you're pretty high. That's why you're here. That's why you're articulating your ideas.
Probably closer to 10 than 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's okay if you don't want to do that, because I'm guessing that there are certain things in your intellect that tell you. So do you have a subjective instinct?
No, I just don't know you that well. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
And also, it depends what you mean, right? Because you'll say that you have if you say that you're a 10, like you
I don't know why Alex O'Connor right now, like he's so defensive for some reason. I don't know why he's on edge, but I feel like if I was in a room with Dr. K, like if Dr. K was in the room with me, I would feel so comfortable. I would just be like, oh man, no matter where this goes, I know Dr. K is going to have all of our backs. Just keep buying Church and Dwight. I don't even know what Church and Dwight is. Alex, drop the mask. You ain't slick. Yeah, so, like I see him playing like some, like I don't know. He's playing conservative here, or I don't know what would be the word to use. He's being timid when I don't know why he feels timid. I mean, obviously, maybe he's not intentionally being timid, but I don't know why. Like what his intentions are that's leading him to being timid. Dogmatic. He hasn't really pushed a dogma right now, so I wouldn't say that yet. He's been so yeah. I guess to just sum up, he's been more apprehensive about talking. Like through the language that has been set up here. So he's been adamant about the semantics. He's been pointing out how there's ambiguities in some of the questions. And I think I mentioned that. Now, if this was a conversation with just him and the Christian, then I could see why that would be necessary. But the fact that Dr. K's in the room, I feel like we could all take a deep breath and chances are there's not going to be any gotchas on the semantics here. And also, Dr. K, I think, has been pretty good in terms of how he's articulated things. So we'll see. Well, maybe my speculations are going to be completely off going forward.
You used the phrase earlier, sense. Sense.
It's because Dr. K is spiritual too, perhaps. Yeah, maybe that's we'll have to see. But I think I've seen them talk before. So actually, no, he just said I just met you. So we gotta. Yeah, is this really the first time Dr. K has talked to Alex? What's going on here?
Sense of meaning in life, and because you're talking about this from an empirical standpoint of whether people report having a sense of meaning, whereas I think that Greg is probably talking about, literally speaking, whether there is actually, in fact, a real meaning, whether or not people sense it or not. You could say that you have a 10 out of 10, and Greg could say, well, it's great that you feel that way, but it's misguided because the purpose that you have identified in your life is the wrong one. And so to me, the important question is not so much whether you subjectively report feelings like you have purpose in life.
I think it's the fact that the Christian is in the room that is throwing Alex for a loop. He feels like he needs to now play a larger role in making sure that we are not, giving too much to this Christian over here.
That purpose is grounded in something real and true.
Yeah, so I think that your answer right now is the reason why you think some of these questions are unanswerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you adopt that frame, you'll never know.
But I don't think they're unanswerable.
Okay, let me just finish. Okay, so my first experience of this, right, is that first of all, there is a subjective barometer. Like, how do we know whether we have purpose? Maybe we listen to other people, but there is some sort of internal sense of this. And this is where the science.
Right. Like it almost doesn't matter like what is going on in your body and, like what is actually leading you, compelling you to answer the question. But if I were to ask you, like, do you feel like you have purpose in your life? And you were to say yes, like that's pretty good. Like that's a pretty clear gauge, right? Because I'm assuming that you understand the concept of purpose generally enough or similarly enough that you understand that it is something that I consider as like meaningful or emotionally rewarding. So when you say yes, that gives me a lot of confidence that what you're saying is something to do with, how good you feel about doing the things that you're doing. Like, we don't have to go that deep into what we're actually, what is actually firing in the brain, or like what the non-subjective gauge should be. Like, the subjective gauge here, I think, is quite apt. Classic new atheist academic from respectable university stance. Now, I don't want to go crazy on Alex. Like, I do like the way that Alex, I guess I should say, I do usually like how Alex like goes about discussions and whatnot. So I'm not like a Alex O'Connor hater here. I'm just pointing out that perhaps. I'm just pointing out that he's being slightly difficult in this conversation, but I think that the reason is because it's very important for him to make these things clear, given that we've got a Christian in the room who's going to try to push all kinds of, really ambiguous framing on us. And yeah, regardless of whether or not, I mean, now I'm putting my stuff forward, but like, regardless of how effective religion can be on people's positive emotions, which in my understanding it is actually quite beneficial for people. If we're going to be like true to the science, like he evoked truth right there, which is, it's a careful thing you got to do. And, if that's his goal here, then now he has to, you have to make a lot of things clear. Like, if someone is gaining a lot of positive emotion out of their religion, but it's not necessarily what reflects empirical truth in the physical world, then what do we make of this conversation? What do we have to do here? This is why every debate room needs a Wittgensteinian. Everyone's just talking about a little some. Yeah, I think it does help to be able to, navigate semantics and intentions and all the things that are necessary. Hopefully this is like the type of, like, hopefully what I'm doing here, this type of commentary is beneficial in terms of making case studies out of these discussions. And I would love to make it a recurring bit or activity on the stream to watch people talk and then point out like where, what people are doing while they're doing it. And I guess interpret what people are doing. But yeah, I probably need work on that as well. I'm probably not doing the best job right now, so
Science becomes really important because if you look at people who have like a history of trauma or
lab
something, what you tend to
it.
find is that there are certain like neurobiological things that can happen to you that will literally affect the parts of your brain that are able to detect purpose. So this is sort of like a subjective experience. And I think the way that, and I love your emphasis on mechanism, and I think this is what, in my opinion, science and spirituality can really add, is they add the how, right? They add like, why is it that one person has purpose and another person doesn't have purpose?
I already know what's going to happen. All right,
in my experience,
what's going to happen? Actually, we're not going to be able to finish it today, unfortunately. Maybe we finish it this weekend. Maybe I just make time in the stream this weekend to watch more of this thing. But yeah, let's get the predictions out of the way.
Way that I operate, I'm not saying it's correct. It's effective in terms of helping people move the needle on reducing suicidality, improving resilience, giving them a reason to wake up in the morning. Like, it tends to work. And it's not just me, it's that there's a bunch of methodologies that we have in psychotherapy and stuff like that that accomplish these kinds of things, that there's some internal sense of purpose. Now, what I think surprises a lot of people is that there are two ways that you increase that sense of purpose. The first is a bucket of things that are kind of counterintuitive. And this is where we also have to understand that purpose correlates with certain other things in life. So if I feel like I am in control of my life, then my sense of purpose will increase. Those two things are correlated. It's not clear whether it's one thing that manifests in two ways or it's probably two discrete.
Dr. K is just so equipped. He's just, he's ready. All right, here we go. The Christian and Alex O'Connor will obviously make the same point they've been making for the past 1,000 millenniums. Dr. K will actually say something useful. That's it. All right, let's see.
Things because there's some subtlety there. But just as a very simple example, if you take someone who feels out of control in life and you help them get control of their life, and there's a really great example of this, which is something called...
By the way, this is why I think that part one is so important, because when you actually get to the framing of like where you are and what you can do in it, then regardless of what we're about to do, which is all the practical stuff in part two, and then, you know, the orienting it towards your, you know, your life entirely, trying to like go towards a meaningful life. I think getting that type of power and control from part one is crucial. So we have to, you know, make sure that that doesn't get lost. I guess, granted, the tricky thing that we have to always deal with is that there are some inaccessible topics that we do go into in part one that unfortunately are somewhat necessary for getting a comprehensive picture of the whole story of how we understand and the world and how we understand our own freedom in it. So, you know, we're going to have to make that as palatable as possible as we continue talking about the more palatable stuff up here.
Challenges versus active challenges. So there's a fascinating research on anxiety that shows that if you're someone in life whose life is happening to you, like you wake up one day and then like your boss wants you to come in for work and you have to pay rent at the end of the month and like you're logging onto Tinder and people aren't responding to you, life is controlling the direction that you move. And people feel overwhelmed by this and they want freedom, they want control. What they end up doing is they wish that they didn't have these things, so they run away from these problems. So passive challenges are challenges that life imposes upon you, that you didn't sign up for. Then there's something really fascinating, which is your sense of control in life does not correlate just with the passive challenges. It correlates with the ratio of passive challenges to active challenges. Active challenges are things that you choose to do that are difficult. So this is really fascinating, but if you're getting bodied by life in 3 different directions, the solution to that is not run away from those problems. It's actually to wake up and start to push yourself in a particular direction. I want to do this instead. If you want to learn how to like read, learn philosophy, start studying philosophical texts, as you start to take on more, which is very counterintuitive because when most people feel overwhelmed, they don't feel like they can do more. The exact solution is to take on more active challenges. Mm-hmm. Then you have some sense of control in life. And once your ratio of active challenges to passive challenges is more evened out, this does something really cool. It gives you a sense that I'm no longer out of control. Mm-hmm. Once you feel like you're no longer...
Yeah, you know what's something that's interesting to think about is like, conceptually, responsibility is like the necessary component of actually doing something intentionally. And I guess that we talk about that. And like, this is kind of in the discussion of the implicit ethics. So we can make a case here. Something like, responsibility is the prerequisite for this is really like a part one thing. We probably should have included this in part one, but we could put it here. It's probably fine. Is for deliberate action. I should say subjectively speaking. So it's like when I say responsibility here, like you have to understand that something was possible and that you did it, and when you understand this whole narrative of you seeing the possibility and then you actually doing the thing, and perhaps it's seeing the responsibility and then doing the thing. Then you now understand what has just happened as something that you did, as opposed to something that has happened to you. So this is something maybe we can make more clear, but I think that's where it could go. Where are we going? We're going back here.
Longer out of control. This is the really cool thing. Then your capacity to deal with the stuff that life throws at you actually improves. So there's this. This is just one example of like one scientific neurobiological principle that has some psychology associated with, where you can do particular things to give yourself a sense of direction in life. Now, some of the stuff around worship and spiritual practice that can do it too, but I think that usually
the other correlate is, you could think about this as there's a bunch of dragons in your life, and it's they're asserting their dominance on you, or their constraint on you. So in that story with the little kid, it was like the dragon was in the way, so the mom had to keep walking around the dragon. And once you notice the dragon, it gets smaller, and then you could take it on, and you don't get rid of it. So like as he's talking about here, it's not like you can run away from these things and get rid of them. It's that you actually just keep it in your vision, and you deal with it in the way that you can. Perhaps there are things that you can get rid of, right? Like there are dragons you can overcome, and then they, you gain the new freedom from that.
What I tend to see is that, if someone is lost in life, you can sort of answer it by these big questions. You can sort of think about this sort of transcendental purpose, which I'm happy to talk about. But I think there's a lot of like little stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
And as you implement these things, the sense of purpose in your life, your internal lived experience of feeling out of control will change.
Let me offer a few thoughts if I could. One, I want to speak to something that you've said, Alex.
Oh no, this guy doesn't care at all what Dr. K just said. What Dr. K just said is like the premise for our entire book. It's, like the implicit premise is that the stuff that he was talking about that you could do and apply, which do actually help people, are empirically tested things. So from that, there's just high probability that they will have some positive effect on your life. It's not a certainty, but that's just how empirical science works.
That I just want to offer caution about. When we talk about motivation, the motivation for something, we sometimes confuse that with justification. So someone might say to me, as an atheist, for example, well, you're a Christian because you were born in America. If you were born in Saudi Arabia, you wouldn't be a Christian, you'd be a Muslim. Of course, that's irrelevant to the question of whether Islam or Christianity or some other religion is true. It doesn't speak to that. It speaks to psychology, okay? And the fact is that if the atheist was born in Saudi Arabia, he wouldn't be an atheist either, likely. The key question is what motivates people, for example, to think about purpose. Death may be a fear of death. That might be a motivation. The question is whether the place they land in answering the question has any objective truth to it or not. It could be that there is a God and that there is an afterlife. And facing death does give comfort to that. I should say, when facing death, you have comfort because there is a God and there's something that you're going to. It's closer communion with him. Okay. Just because you're motivated by death doesn't mean that your belief about the afterlife is somehow an error.
I just want to just add something in here. So I think part of the reason
I think he took the conversation. He took the ball and he ran in the opposite direction. Like now that's a discussion about something completely different. Yo, Dharmadam, what's good? We're discussing purpose in life, and despite Dr. K's efforts in making this a very practical discussion, I think it's going to get bogged down into something that's slightly more pedantic and pretty much just Alex versus the Christian here.
Convened you guys to have this conversation
but
today
we'll see.
Is because I've got several people in my life that are I can literally lay out the personas, but I've got one particular friend who's between 35 and 40 years old, living in Dubai, living in a glass box, freelancer. So he wakes up in the morning, his bed is there, he then works there, then goes back to bed. He's single, no kids. In his life at the moment, he said to me that he can't get out of bed anymore. He feels stuck. And then about 6 months after, out of the blue, it turns out, without telling any of us, and we're his best friends.
Well, yeah. In the video, all you missed is that Dr. K finished his very excellent his excellent spiel, and then the Christian took it and just ran in the other direction and changed the subject. But fortunately, then our host, do we know what this guy's name is? Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, what's his actual name? I don't know. Is it Steven? It's probably Steven. Well, anyway, then Steven, what a classic, just as predicted. I remember one bit, I felt like Alex Strawman, Dr. K, but then K was super nice, didn't even correct him. Yeah, Dr. K is just so excellent in so far. I mean, so far, Dr. K has been so excellent at managing this. And I was speculating that it seems like Alex is a little on edge because the Christian's there. I think if Dr. K and Alex had a discussion, it would be very productive. But because they've included the Alex and the Christian, and they are, especially since they are labeled as so, like now there's going to have to be tension. So hopefully Alex gives Dr. K more grace. But we'll see. We'll see. Is the host Christian? I don't know if the host is Christian. The other guy was Christian, right? Like the fourth guy. But I think I don't know if the host said anything about his stance on religion yet. I wonder what Jesus himself would say about this. Ooh, I mean, wouldn't he show up? Wasn't that his deal? Like, wasn't he going into the church to talk with the scholars? Didn't he get in trouble for that? Was that not a story? Not that he's getting in the way, but I think his show, he wants a Christian in there. Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe that is the hope. But so I mean, he was very honest about saying that he's at like a 5 in terms of his purpose scale, where he feels. So, you know, perhaps he just wants a full range of, like, you know, he could get a lot of backlash, and perhaps rightly so if he's got no one that's actually religious, or you know, Dr. K did say he's religious, but no one that's, you know, Christian in the mix when talking about such huge questions, you know, especially if you don't really understand the field. Granted, obviously, I wouldn't mind if the Christian wasn't there, because I think we do understand how we can get to determining a path for life without Christianity, or at least without committing to all that Christianity requires you to commit to. But yeah, so perhaps, yeah, he just wants to be comprehensive here. What denomination is the gentleman a part of? Oh, which are we talking about? The Greg Kokel? Because I do not know, unfortunately.
He's flown to America, he's been baptized, he's a Christian. Suddenly his life has purpose and meaning again. He's a completely different person. And this individual never, ever, he would be the last person that you'd think would be religious. Got another friend, female, just over 30 years old, doesn't have kids, freelance, works at home. When I asked her what her meaning and purpose in life, she said to me she wants to get to having 200 plants she can water. She names all of them. She then told me a week after she's in therapy because she feels lost and stuck in life. And so much of the central point why I've been motivated to have this conversation is, it appears to me, and I haven't nailed this hypothesis yet, that freedom, independence, be your own boss, the decline in people having children, the glamorization of, as you said at the very beginning, like, you know, do it yourself, do it your way, is failing people in some way. Mm-hmm. And that actually the push for independence was in some way some kind of lie. I actually also went through the same new atheist baptism that you went through. And I read all those books at 18 years old, and 2 years I was debating dog walkers on the street about God. I was such a staunch atheist. But I now find myself in a position where I'm almost back to being curious again. Because it feels like
so that's where he's at.
So just wanted to reframe.
Curious. I think people need task. I think the purpose is intimately tied up with the idea of task to fulfill. That's why people tend to find meaning in projects which are not completed yet. In fact, Pascal writes quite compellingly about this when he writes about boredom, and he imagines a gambler, someone who enjoys gambling, and says, well, why is this person gambling? Because they're doing this thing with the chance of winning some money. Okay, so why don't you just give them the money? Just take the gambler and give him all the money that he could possibly receive without playing the game. And he won't be very fulfilled, even though he's getting ostensibly what he was trying to get. No, that wouldn't be fulfilling because he enjoys the gambling. Okay, says Pascal, then let him play the game, but make it such that he'll never actually win the money, but he gets to keep playing the game. And he's not going to be very fulfilled by that either. That's also going to be completely pointless. And so Pascal noticed that what you kind of need to avoid boredom, and I suppose to imbue your life with purpose, at least in this analogy, is some kind of task to fulfill that you haven't fulfilled yet, that you don't know if you're going to fulfill, that you believe will bring you fulfillment when you get it. But you haven't got it yet. So I think religion does it really well, because it's the definition of something which you don't have now, which you can strive for, which when you get, you believe will be fulfilling.
So I love these examples because
Dr. K is great. He's like, all right, we gotta get this back in line. He said in 2013 on the Stand to Reason Clear Thinking Christianity website that he was a Calvinist, This guy doesn't even believe in free will, like none of it. Is that Calvinists don't believe in free will? I feel like Catholic or some other type of Christian would be very different. That is, if he's a traditional Calvinist. He might have his own views, of course. I didn't even know Calvinists was a thing before you just said it. I probably heard it before, but I did not remember it. They don't believe in free will. Do they not believe in free will in the same way that a new atheist wouldn't believe in free will, or do they not believe it in some different spiritual way? Don't you think if these people have fundamental differences, then they are likely to just circle around those differences? I would say that if Dr. K wasn't in the room, because Dr. K seems to have a good grasp of the... So two things are going in Dr. K's favor right now. He seems to have a good grasp of these topics, and he's on the side of empirical science. Like, he's keeping this grounded in like his actual practice. Like, you know, he's got patients. He sees this stuff. He knows how to treat this stuff with actual people. And the other thing that he's going with him is he seems to be spiritually in line, or at least in line with his emotions, such that he can not get, you know, carried away by whatever expectations, you know, he might need to have in this moment. It seems like Alex is primed emotionally against this Christian guy, and the Christian guy might be, we'll have to see a little bit more of him. I don't know how gracious he is yet, but you know, he might be a little primed against the atheist here. But yeah, I do think that if we were to put them in the room without Dr. K, then yes, it would definitely be a circling around those differences. But hopefully Dr. K now plays the moderator and really hones in on what we're actually trying to talk about. No, if I'm correct, John Calvin believed that everything was predetermined by God because God was sovereign. Wow. Oh, so it's that type of free will, or lack of free will. That's crazy. Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, and other types of Protestants have different views. Something along those lines. Don't quote me. I'm going to quote you right now. That was Onion Helmet. Let the transcriber know when we're making our stream summary. All right. Oh, it would actually be really funny, and I'm not telling the transcriber to do this, but if the transcriber did quote you on that would be pretty funny. That was me. What can I say? Scratch that from the record. All right. Yeah, and at some point I do want to make it a more of an activity of going through those summaries, but we're kind of behind. I think maybe the last summary we did was when Silksong released a month ago, so we are like a month late on the summary of reading the summaries. I caught up to, I don't know, maybe I actually only caught up to like a week ago, but we've got a good amount of new summaries all through Silksong and through the start of, I guess, this past week. But yeah, they're all there. You guys are racking up Chatter of the Day awards, so thank you very much. I do appreciate you guys coming in here and shooting the shit, and hopefully we are progressing towards something useful in our discussions. So yeah, I do appreciate it. All right, we've got maybe 5 minutes, and then I should probably get ready to leave. Facts, nice. All right.
Because actually, we know exactly what's going on in that thought experiment, right? So now there's so many advances in neuroscience that we understand why people gamble, right? So we understand that giving someone money will satisfy a gambler in one of two cases. And I've seen this. I've worked with people who are professional poker players. Some people, what we describe motivation is actually like a dozen different things going on in your brain. So if you were a professional poker player in poker, and I've literally worked with professional poker players who had no meaning in life. It's so funny. I'm thinking about a particular person. And then, achieved a certain financial goal. That's why they play poker. So if your motivation is that I'm playing poker because I have a skill that I'm using to get money, if that is your internal motivation, that is going to come from certain circuits in your brain. It's going to come from places like your frontal lobe. Now, as Pascal pointed out, If you give the average person who gambles money, what are they going to do with it? They're going to gamble more, right? So that means that their motivation is coming from something more closer to the nucleus accumbens, a random reinforcement schedule. Maybe they're trying to suppress amygdala emotions. So we actually can like look at that example and we can understand why each of those things happens. And then the most beautiful thing is that there is absolutely a scenario where someone can gamble and never win, and they can absolutely have purpose. So this is where, I know that sounds insane, but if you look at some of these things from the Zen tradition, right? So these are practices that have no purpose, to act with no meaning whatsoever. And the beautiful
this is buying lottery tickets or buying the Powerball ticket, like all in throughout your entire life. You're probably never going to win the Powerball, but like perhaps you gain purpose from doing it. I'm curious if that's the same circuits. This is the problem of bringing someone on and just blanket calling them a Christian. Yeah, but he is an apologist, so I guess that balances it out.
thing about that is you explore that sort of angle, and there's sort of a neuroscience perspective to this as well, is that if you really think about it, you're saying, okay, so people invest in this purpose, or in this purpose-seeking thing like religion, with the idea that I'll find payoff at the end. Is that what you were saying earlier?
I'm saying something a bit different. What I was going to go on to say is to point out that, and bear in mind, this comes from a part of Pascal's Pensée, which is titled Man Without God. You know, he goes on to discuss man with God. But I look at the development of the human species and our particular proclivities. Lewis makes this argument from desire that you mentioned. Why do we have a desire for food? Well, because there is actually food to have. The evolutionary biologist says the reason that we develop hunger is because those who didn't died. And if you don't have some sense of hunger, you're not going to seek out food and you will die. And so it just so happens that those who develop this feeling of hunger will be more likely to survive, and therefore hunger is a part of our human condition. Well, such is meaning. If you have two isolated communities, one of whom says, I just don't care. Whatever, man. No interest in having children, no interest in building societies, legal systems, constitutions, whatever the case, moral systems, none of it. They just don't care. Nihilists. They're not even going to have children. That society will die out. Another society, which just so happens to, perhaps delusion, like in an exercise of delusion, just develop this inexplicable feeling. And of course, this evolves over time and starts with essentially the kind of random mutation of ideas that works on the genetic level in evolution. They call it memetics, when it's ideas rather than genes. The society which just ends up developing this idea that actually, I can't quite explain why, but I just have this drive towards building a society and engaging in legal justice and moral systems and countries. They're just more likely to survive. So we end up with this sense.
Yes. So he's looking for like the deeper reasoning behind meaning, which is I think it's literally what I wrote down here. Like, we are going to have to make this case that he's talking about right now in part 3. And, obviously this is controversial, but I think that's the best we've got. Just an evolutionary speculative view of why we would evolve to require something like a religion that would make our lives feel like they have purpose and make sense of them. All right, this is let's go on here. Be honest, Stan. What was the question? Apologists seem to mostly be the same anyway. You bought a lottery ticket with the hope. Yeah, I think my roommate and I, we've got this this, I don't know if it's agreement, this bit where when like Powerball or Mega Million is high enough, like, it's reached the crazy, like the billion range, we get it, and then we talk about what we would do if we won. And in my mind, what we're buying is the opportunity to have this very irrational hope, and to then like creatively think about what you would do and all that stuff. So we're buying an experience, and it's it's kind of like a social thing. It's not likely to do it, but so like that's what I think I'm buying at that point. All right, Charles Darwin. I heard that from Peterson, who invented it. Eliade? Oh, are we talking about the this type of evolutionary perspective? I don't know if this would be I feel like Eliade went into. I mean, I didn't read Eliade, but this is my guess. This is my speculation, and I do have to get out of here. I think Eliade went into specific ideas, whereas this is more of a discussion of why religion as a concept would have come about, which I imagine wasn't just Eliade or Jordan Peterson. I imagine this is a part of a larger discussion, a larger evolutionary discussion of ideas. Maybe even Buss talked about it in evolutionary psychology, but it would have had to been speculative. I don't know. I'm going to keep it real. Meaning exists because God said so is kind of chilling. That is pretty chilling, you know? Like if you can get by with that, that's pretty great. That's the thing. That's the bummer of this type of document. Like for me to give this type of document to someone who's totally fine under the what we might consider a delusion of, you know, religion, like we might be destroying, you know, what they've got going on. The premise, or like the idea, or the I guess the argument is that it'll having this type of clarity will better equip people overall to navigate their lives, especially given that, you know, religion isn't as big as it used to be, and because there's so many things that contradict religion and whatnot. Don't worry, Stan, we've all done it. Maybe Jung, I'm not sure, but I would look for someone that's a little more in the science space than the philosophy space for that type of reference, if we're going to reference something like that. Stan, I like your work, but God already said this, brother. Yeah, I'm gonna get a letter in the mail from God telling me to stop streaming. That's why you be nice to Christians and don't try to fix them, right? No need to topple the tower. Yeah, the downside though, and this now we're gonna have to start getting into like Sam Harris arguments, is that people that are quite dogmatic in their religion tend to start thinking certain things because they take a more literalist approach of the texts. So how do you go about that? You know, I would feel more comfortable. There's like a moral thing that we ought to show people this type of thing so that they don't do what they think is right and actually like, you know, be prejudiced and whatnot. Okay, I do have to leave. I'm sorry. So, see you guys later. Have a good night. Thanks for hopping on. And, yeah, check out that movie.